Wherever you are, welcome. However you found this moment, I'm glad you did. I'm Dave, and this is Dave's Head, where perspective matters and clarity sets the tone. Let's get into it. What's in my head? So, America turned 250, and if you've just been conscious um, recently, y- sometimes you have to wonder if America's free for everyone. If the freedom to live, the freedom to die, the freedom to do whatever you want to and be held accountable when you do things wrong, like illegally, if all things are actually equal. Independence Day celebrates the founding principles or ideals, America's founding principles, ideas of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Heard of that before? 250 years later, many Americans continue to ask whether these ideals experienced equally by everyone or whether trust in institutions has eroded, whether those things are experienced equally by everyone. Accountability shouldn't have a political party. And one thing that I hope that we all can agree with is that public confidence depends on believing that everyone, from elected officials to ordinary everyday citizens, is held to the same standard. Controversies, when they accumulate without clear resolutions, people begin to question not just the leaders, but the institutions themselves. I say that because there's been a lot of controversy lately. There's the war in Iran, or as Trump called it, Japan, the other day. Um, whether it's a legal war or not, there's the billions with a B dollars that Trump and his family have enriched themselves with since inauguration number two, arguably, controversially, if that enrichment has come because of insider trading. These very suspect trades days before policy decisions that benefit Trump and very few people in this country. If it was a one off, lucky person. But it's a lot. B with the billions with a B. There's the newest situation, or one of the newest situations, with the pool in DC, where an alleged pool cover material slasher, whatever you want to call him, appears to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And the DOJ, I believe, is seeking 10 years in prison for allegedly slashing a pool. And they want us to believe that vandals made a 300-foot gash in the Lincoln pool. I think it's a Lincoln pool. And I'm scratching my head if you're watching, because it's one of those things that boggles my mind that so many people believe that one of the most watched pools in the world, 24-hour camera surveillance, that someone could slash 300 feet. You know how much 300 feet is? 300 feet, simple math, 3 feet in a yard, that's 100 yards. You know how long a football field is? It's 100 yards if you don't count the end zones. So you're telling me that one of the most watched pools in the world, that a single person took an X-Acto knife, basically, and cut a football field length gash in a pool, and that caused so much damage that all these pieces are floating to the top and ripping off, and algae's growing everywhere. That's what caused it. I was born on a day, I believe it was Wednesday, but it definitely wasn't yesterday. And then you have the most recent controversy. And listen, Mitch McConnell is not that beloved by a lot of people. A lot of people blame him for the state that our federal government, our U.S. government is in right now, denying President Obama, a rightful Supreme Court justice pick. The whole J6 thing, enabling Trump and his cronies to be who they are today and act how they act today. And there's a lot of jokes online. But ultimately, I think a lot of people don't actually, in their heart of hearts, wish for the death of a person that they don't know intimately or have nothing directly negative against. Now, I'm not going to lie and say I've never wished that on anybody in my life because people pissed me off before, just like I'm sure people piss you off. You're like, I hope you die. But this controversy over Mitch McConnell's health, and I think if you have two eyes and two brain cells that bang together every once in a while, you realize that Mitch McConnell was in failing mental health and physical health for a long time. And so reports that he was rushed to the hospital after cardiac arrest and has gone into the bat cave, can't be found for a long time, but people are now coming out and saying, hey, I talked to him yesterday, 20 minutes or 17 minutes. The exact number is kind of weird. But when the premise behind this controversy is that if he is still alive, I believe August 1st or August 3rd, something like that, that a special election to replace him is avoided. And therefore, Republicans keep the power of that position squarely in the hands of somebody, at least not literally because he would be dead, but keep that power on their side. Special election, anything can happen. And so citizens deserve transparency. They deserve trust because trust is difficult to earn and very easy to lose. These situations don't feel like our federal government, the Trump administration, and Trump himself are earning trust, but more so they're eroding trust. MAGA and Republicans spent a long time demonizing, criticizing, and making fun of President Joe Biden because there's a apparent mental decline and aging, right? He wasn't falling all over himself. He wasn't, besides the one or two instances of mental brain farts, for lack of a better way to put it, he looks better than Mitch McConnell looked, right? Even now, Trump mistaking Iran for Japan. His gait seems way off. He's got blotches all over his hands. I mean, they can't put enough makeup on his hands at this point. Clearly, his health is declining. But all this hoopla was made about President Biden. We don't have the same standards for Trump. We don't have the same standards for McConnell. Why? My hypothesis, my theory, is that it's about power. It's not about for the people, by the people, other people. It's not about doing what's best for you and I. It's about maintaining power and control, being able to be lawless in many cases without repercussions. Because if you have all the power, there's no one to stop you. There's no one to check you. And that's why it's evidently and evident that it's increasingly annoying that these federal judges and the Supreme Court, which grew a spine recently, but when these judges side against the Trump administration and therefore Trump himself, that he flies off the handle on his quote unquote truth social. But the nation's 250th birthday shouldn't be about just fireworks and celebration. It should be about an opportunity to honestly ask whether we're becoming the country our founders envisioned. And when we think about that, we got to accurately depict the history of this nation, how we got from 250 years ago to now. Taking down factual history because you don't like what it conveys is not being honest. Whitewashing factual history because you don't like what it conveys is not being honest. If you're going to talk about history and tell history, just simply be honest. You know, they say a lot of times that if you just apologize, if you just say, you know what, I screwed up, that moving on is so much easier. But if you, to quote a movie, one of my favorite movies, if you insist on dying with the lie, then not only is your trust eroded, but there are others who will use that energy in the opposite of it to make sure the truth gets out there. And so when people say, oh, we're sick of hearing about slavery, well, stop lying about it. And then maybe people wouldn't talk about it so much. Be honest about it. And then we can all learn from it. We can all grow from it. The things that people are saying, like get over it, or just simply trying to whitewash it, change history, pretend that it didn't happen, completely rewrite it. Yeah, that's not going to work. There are too many people in this world who will not let it work. And so the more you try to do those things, the bigger and bigger and bigger the resistance, and the louder and louder and louder the resistance will be. Or you just simply tell the truth. Talk about the stain of the nation. Talk about the bad parts of the history. Grow from it, learn from it, prevent it from happening again. So you have to ask whether, looking at this country honestly in the current state that it is today, whether we are becoming what our forefathers envisioned, or if we're moving farther away from it. Or if we're simply just celebrating for the point of celebrating a number. 250, woohoo! Whether we're talking about institutions, trust, or accountability, all of it comes back to the people, for the people, by the people, of the people. Whatever order you want to put it, it's the same thing. Of the people, by the people, for the people. For the people is pretty damn important. And until there's a certainty, a comfort that what's happening in this nation is actually of the people, by the people, and for the people, 250 is just a number. Just like 251, 252. Just an accumulation of time. Until those three things mean something, those numbers can actually have meaning.
Dave's Ed Podcast is now part of the Alive Podcast Network, the home of Black voices, where community, culture, and creatives live. Dave's Ed Podcast adds to the vast catalog of titles available on the Alive Podcast Network app on iOS and Android. Check out Dave's Ed Podcast and many others on the Alive Podcast Network app, the home of Black voices.
Next thing, and last thing that's on my mind, is we're in the middle of the World Cup, and it's very interesting to me that the U.S., Canada, and Mexico are all eliminated now. They're kind of the host nations, right? And so you would hope that one of them would be the Cinderella story that got to, like the Final Four or even the championship, like the World Cup championship, right? But that's not to be. And there was a bunch of controversy. Before I get to my actual point, there was a bunch of controversy because a U.S. player was red carded out of a match in the round of 32, I believe. And so by rule, he should have been disqualified, not just that game, but also from the next game, which was a game they wound up losing anyway, in disastrously embarrassing fashion, 4-1. And the entire sequence of events was stained because of the interference of Trump. Because why wouldn't it, right? Why wouldn't he stick his nose in something that he had no place in? And so put a whole stain on the entire round. I think personally, just my opinion, I felt like the U.S. team was a little taken aback and embarrassed by the sequence of events and came out just completely flat. And maybe skill-wise, they were overmatched. But it's one thing to be overmatched. It's another one to have no cohesivity, no fight in what you're doing. To be taken out of the game before you step a single foot on the pitch, right? And that's what it looked like. It looked like an uninspired team. And if you played organized sports, team sports, and you've been a part of a losing effort where it felt like your team was uninspired, was not fighting for each other, that's a rough feeling to have. But on the positive side, The World Cup is exposed that humanity looks different close up. And by close up, I mean 4K. I don't know if you have a 4K TV. I encourage you 100% to get one. Watching the World Cup in 4K is amazing. I know I have this conversation every once in a while, the difference between HD and 4K, and it's not everybody's cup of tea. I love me some 4K though. But watching fans from dozens of nations celebrate together, watching, and I want to say it's Japan or China, I can't remember, but their crowd base just cleaning up after themselves essentially in the stands before they're leaving, which is a novel concept, right? You don't see that everywhere. But it reminds us that most people simply want joy. Most people simply want community. Most people want something to just believe in. And it also reminds us that headlines aren't real life. The news networks that put out this propaganda and this fear mongering. And then you watch in 4K, if you're me, you watch as people from different cultures simply come together and have a great time. No biases, no pointless fighting, no name call, no racism, no none of this. Conflict dominates news cycles, right? Because conflict sells. Sponsors don't pay for these premium spots because these shows are so good and good for humanity that's why they want to pay for them. They pay for them because the people who want the conflict and controversy watch the shows that promote the conflict and controversy. That's why it happens. Everyday kindness rarely trends. How many times have you seen a story trend because of a good thing, right? A good citizen or a great fan base or a politician doing a positive thing. I mean, that's just rare in itself, but still, those things don't trend despite the fact that millions of times a day, they happen. But a shared experience, I think, unites us, right? It's why we can do, back in the day, block parties where we shut down the street, shut down a couple streets, we block things with our cars. We back in South Philly, we used to get the police barricades. They were orange and I think they were yellow and blue. And I don't know, the block captain would put in a request and we get them delivered that morning or something like that, block off the entire neighborhood and have a great time as neighbors. But sports have an incredible ability to not only temporarily erase borders, but erase politics, erase religion, erase race, even with language barriers, erase language. 90 minutes plus injury time and all that stuff. I ain't seen a 90-minute match ever, like ever. Seriously. But for 90 minutes, everyone just loves the game. The cheering, the chanting, the just random hugs and all types of stuff. Fear is easy. Hope takes work. President Obama campaigned on hope during both his campaigns for president. And it's a great example that hope takes work. It's easy to convince people to fear, especially fear each other, fear the unknown. It takes intention, right, to recognize our shared humanity and resist narratives that are designed to divide us. That's what hope is. Hope is resisting the narrative and relying on your experience to determine your experience, right? More, probably better stated, hope is resisting the narrative and relying on your interaction to determine your experience, right? Because if I assume that you're a POS, that's going to be a different interaction than if I assume nothing and let you tell me or show me you're a POS. But you could also show me and tell me that you're an amazing person. And so it's all about going into an interaction completely open-minded to the possibility of a positive interaction. Not to channel a racial issue, but it's like back in the day when, I'm hoping it's still back in the day, but back in the day, I'm guessing 60s, 50s, where we hear stories about A black man walking down the street and a white woman clutching her purse and crossing to the other side. That black man may not have had two thoughts about the woman he was about to walk past, but she had two thoughts about him. I'm scared, and he might be a criminal. Now, what if she just simply walked by, said good afternoon or good morning, whatever time of day it was, and he said good morning or good afternoon? It's a different interaction because there was no assumptions. Now, I'm not naive to believe that I can exist in this world and walk around and give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and there will be nothing negative that ever happens from any interaction in my life. My own experience tells me that's not true. We call that street smarts, right? Taking in available information and what you learn from quote unquote the streets to understand that there are indicators of negativity that people give off. But I don't look at someone and say they're negative. I look at someone and say, oh, that's an indicator. That's another indicator. All right. Now I need to be on my P's and Q's. Experience helps, but the interaction should guide you. But positive human moments matter. Every smile between strangers, every jersey swap, which is kind of cool. Although it's a little weird because I just sweated for 90 minutes. Now I'm swapping jerseys. I don't have to put it on. I can definitely swap with you, but I don't have to put it on because that is going to be uncomfortable for me. But the jersey swaps, the acts of sportsmanship, helping somebody who just slid their legs out, it's good sportsmanship. The handshakes afterwards, the hugs afterwards, all those things remind us that the world is filled with more good people than social media and quote unquote news networks convey to us and show us. I'm excited to have my guest on in a couple minutes because they've devoted years to solving one of society's fastest growing problems. Not through algorithms alone, but helping people reconnect in real life. And whether his app, process, workflow, methods work or not, I think we need to spend more time intentionally connecting with people. You might find out that stereotype that you believe for decades wasn't valid. You might find out that look that you always associated with anger or a threat, it's just a headache or allergy. You might think that the clues and indicators that you programmed yourself to believing were negative aren't really anything at all. But connecting with people, allowing the World Cup existence to be a norm, to not assume that what's put out on social media and quote unquote news, and I'm going to do the quotes for as long as these news networks pretend to be news instead of entertainment. But as long as these news networks put out this fear mongering disinformation or lies, aka lies, and people still believe them, the effort is going to be uphill. The utopian Star Trek ish, because Star Trek wasn't free of violence either and negative people, but they're vastly fewer than today's time. But the utopian Star Trek ish experience of life is still pretty damn far away. We have too many people in this world who crave power, who crave existence, meaning in the space of power, in the space of financial success and freedom, the space of control. And so people with power and finance and control don't want to give up their power and finance and control. And so they do what they can, manipulate who they can to stay in those powerful financial controlling spaces. But we have an opportunity to change one person at a time, one human at a time, out of the mindset of believing something they honestly may never experience in their life, but they just simply believe it, and accept that a lot of positive humans exist in this world. That's a major move, one at a time. That's what's in my head. So technology has done remarkable things for humanity. I mean, look at the world we're in now, where AI is just taking off and is becoming an integral part of many of our lives. Technology allows us to communicate instantly, learn anything, almost anything at all, and connect with people around the globe again, almost instantaneously. Ironically, a lot of people, or many people, have never felt more alone. And so today's guest believes the answer isn't more screen time, it's using technology to create more face to face time. He's lived around the world, experienced loneliness firsthand, and built a platform to help people create genuine friendships. Joining me today to answer the question of can technology actually solve loneliness is the CEO of Friending, Gabor Kadas. How's it going? And did I pronounce your last name right?
Yes, it is. Thank you for having me, and hello, everybody.
All right. Well, welcome to Days Ed. I'm excited to talk about this because I grew up in a world where we had Match.com and so many other different sites of those natures, but this seems very different from what I can tell. And so I'm excited to talk about it. But before we get into that, as I do with all my guests, if we could take a moment, if you could just tell everybody who you are, what you do, and what you're about.
Yes, my name is Gabor. I spent the last 30 years in video game development, and I think I may be partially the cause of the loneliness epidemic in the sense that people were playing our video games by themselves. But on a more serious side, I spent a lot of time alone in various countries on various continents, and that is together with my co-founder Jolt, felt that it's important to try to solve this as technology, if used incorrectly, is increasing loneliness rather than solving it. So that's our aim, is to increase the number of people who meet face to face and less people on the virtual meeting spaces.
Okay. And I wonder what your thoughts are too on social awkwardness or social incompatibility, where people just aren't comfortable in social settings. Do you think this has helped foster that prevalent issue a little more because there's too much technology or not enough technology to help out with these things?
Yes, absolutely. I think the problem is that generations below me grew up on the screen and haven't learned the basic etiquette of meeting somebody face to face because they just don't. They don't know how to do it. They were not taught by their parents how to do it, and they aren't comfortable initiating meetings face to face. They are more comfortable just sitting in front of their screen and chatting away, swiping away, whatever, because they don't know how to meet people face to face. And then the other problem comes, of course, where to meet people face to face. But in some respects, how is at least as important as where. And they have not grown up socializing with people face to face. I think that's also a huge problem.
Okay. So you've lived in several countries. How did those experiences in those different countries shape the way you look at or feel about friendship?
Yes, I was born in Hungary, which is in Central Europe, grew up in London, UK, and then I moved to Canada. I lived in Spain for a while, and also spent the last 30 years in the US. And it is interesting because in Spain, one of my biggest issues were I didn't speak Spanish or Catalan. I was in Barcelona where it was actually Catalan, so to say, the primary, I guess, language, but I didn't speak Spanish or Catalan. So trying to communicate in English obviously hindered friendship experiences. In school in the UK, that was fine, but I've been in the States for 30 years and moved around dominantly in California, although now I'm in North Carolina, and found that even with the technology, it is difficult to find people who are open to meeting new people. They all say they're open to it, but when push comes to shove, they're not doing anything about it. So and I think that's also one of the problems, as I was saying earlier. People are more comfortable sitting in front of the screen. So yes, I spent several years by myself in various countries, and it's not an experience that I would wish upon everybody, anybody, or I would like to repeat.
Hmm. So talk about the mission of loneliness and when did it stop becoming just an observation that there's this prevalence of loneliness out there, and when did it become a mission leading to uh your at?
Yes, I met my co-founder Jolt, who initially started Friending, and when I joined as the CEO and business development person, I did a lot of research how loneliness affects people in the US, how many people are there in the
Hmm.
US, and I was stunned. I thought it had to do with COVID. I'm not saying it has nothing to do with COVID, and COVID doesn't help, or post-COVID doesn't help, but it's not the biggest issue. The
Hmm.
biggest issue is people are just afraid to meet people, I think. I can tell you that there are about 65 million to 70 million people under 50 who are alone in the US. That's not my number, that's shown by the research. Um,
Hmm.
I can tell you, which I was also surprised about, that it has physiological effects from high blood pressure to high sugar levels. So it acts on your psyche, and your psyche is part of your body. And it's basically, if your body or if your psyche is unhappy, so is your body. So it's not dealt with because it's not like COVID that's contagious. Oh, if I walk by you on the street, I have no idea if you're lonely or
Hmm.
not. I would know perhaps if you have COVID because you have fever, whatever, but you don't have a sign on your forehead saying I am lonely. So I don't know. And that is the problem. It is not treated as a disease because you look normal, or the lonely person looks normal. And
Hmm.
that's the biggest problem. That's why everybody is ignoring it. Yet it is, and not everybody. I mean, you could see the official reports, but on an everyday level, it is certainly ignored.
Yeah, and it reminds me of depression. I mean, depression is not something you can look at someone and see that they're depressed, but loneliness and depression seem cousins of the same family. um
It's more than cutting. If in extreme cases, it does causes depression and suicide even. So
mhm.
it is brothers, I would say, rather than cousins.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So, looking at there's tons of social media platforms out there that promise this connection, or at least gives the impression that connection is part of the foundation of the mission with these social media platforms. But why do you think, with millions upon millions of hundreds of millions of people using these social media platforms, that removing and getting rid of this isolated or lonely feeling isn't happening?
Um, Several reasons. I will draw the analogy from the dating world because there are more dating platforms out there, and we have learned by looking at those platforms what, in our view, mistakes they have made. And there's two biggest issues with the dating world. One of them is the biggest one is the fake profile problem. And the second one belongs to related to that is trust. And I guess the third one is that has to do with the previous two is that it is not in the platform owner's interest to get rid of the fake profiles because their share value, their whatever, depends on the number of users. So if
Hmm.
X platform can say, I have 45 million users, but really, let's say there are only 35 because 10 million are fake. I'm just making this number up. I have no idea what fake numbers are there. Their share values go down, and their intent is not really to get you off the screen. Our intent is being a platform that only helps in connecting people. Our intent is once you are connected is to get you off the screen.
Hmm.
And that is a huge difference. Our mission is to make sure that you go out and you meet people, and we would organize events or you organize events, but these are offline events. So we're using technology to connect, to let you know when there are events or allow people to organize events. But the events are not online. They are offline events, be it curated dinner events, movie events, sporting events, hiking, etc. But those other apps keep you online. That's their core mission, is to keep you online.
Hmm.
That's the biggest difference. And on the safety factor, we verify each individual from day one. So we're using Persona, which is a third-party app, to make sure that you are you. That's how you look like. You cannot put a profile up as a 20-year-old blonde or whatever
Hmm.
and catfish
Yeah.
and do
Yeah.
all that, because it's not going to fly. And that is our difference. And the other platforms are struggling with this. I don't want to name anybody or whatever, but you can research them. And they were trying to do various verifications, offering ID badges that you've been verified, etc. But in my mind, if the whole community is not verified, then it doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. And
Yeah.
that's what we're offering, a safe, verified community.
Yeah, and the two features you talked about looking at your app is the in-person meetings, pushing towards that not intimate connection, but physical connection, where you're in a same place at the same time, getting to know each other. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But pushing people to meet in person. And the second thing, and probably most important that I love, is that you authenticate every single account on your platform to make sure, like you just said, you're not a 20-year-old blonde, but you're really a 45-year-old man, right? With no hair. And those two features, and I want to talk about those, and I know you just talked about them, I want to dive into them a little more because I want to understand specifically the in person, why that was so important of a feature for you to push in your app that people meet in person as opposed to getting to know each other online first and taking time. And I'll caveat by saying, even if you authenticate people, there's a safety issue, right? Meeting people in person. And so, how did you balance trying to get connections with people with the security and authenticity of the person, but with the safety issue that's out there?
As I said, we verify based on a selfie and the person a third-party verification app. The other thing we're doing will be in an upcoming release is that if you feel uncomfortable um, with this, let's say you met in a coffee house and you're uncomfortable with that, there's going to be a way. Simplicity, not going to be the exact way, but just for simplicity's sake, let's say if you tap on your iPhone screen 3 times, one of 3 things will happen. Police will come, they know where you are because of your phone. You could set it so a friend will come. Or the third option is that, assuming that more people use friending, anybody with a friending app in the area would get a push notification
Mhm.
requesting your assistance. So that's the other level of security or safety. But I think you would be dumb enough to do anything once we know who you are, because we have your. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying you're
Mhm.
not the brightest person, to do that, because you get caught in 10 minutes. So that's also, I think, a feature on its own, that you would think more about trying to do anything if everyone knows who you are.
Yeah, and if I could offer, as somebody who's been in engineering like you for 20 some years, an additional feature is a loud alarm that goes off, or a series of
Yes.
all those events, right? A loud alarm, a push notification for friends, call the cops, all those things, all thrown at the wall at the same time, just to, in the best interest of the safety of the person who feels alarm. Um, and so let's shift to you personally for a second. How has developing friending changed the way you personally view friendships and personally make friendships?
It is interesting because you talk to people and you find that some of them may not even realize that they're alone. So that's what's interesting to me about the 60, 70 million people who, according to that study, said that they were alone, is that it's not a macho thing to admit. So even if you realize you're alone, you're not going to admit it. And
Hmm.
secondly, I don't think everybody realizes that they're alone. One of the ways I tell people is, well, I don't know how many Facebook connections you have, but how many have you met in real life? And why
Hmm.
are you alone on a Friday evening? If you have so many friends on Facebook, Friday evening comes along and you're still sitting in front of your laptop or iPad or whatever it happens to be. So do a reality check and be honest with yourself, that am I alone? Can I
Mhm.
just pick up the phone and call a friend to do something? And if the answer to that is yes, that's great. But if you come to the realization that you have thousands of friends on Facebook, but not really, then you should do something about it. And that was, I guess, this sort of conversations that I've been having with
Mhm.
people that really rings an alarm bell in their head, saying, "Hey, wait a minute, I may be really alone."
Yeah. I think the nomenclature of Facebook friends too is part of the problem, right? Because you talk about 4,000, 3,000, a couple thousand Facebook quote unquote friends, but they aren't really your friends, are they? They're internet connections is probably a better way to put it, but that's not very marketable, right? Facebook internet connections. Um, and so it's become part of the nomenclature to say Facebook friends, even though, as you just eloquently put, they're not really your friends. They're may not even be associates. They may just be internet connections, but we don't say that at all. Um, and you kind of touched on my next question a little bit. You talked about doing really a self check or reality check. But for someone who does feel isolated, who has those 4,000 Facebook friends, but can't call on a single one, what do they need to know? Where should they start to try to get away from that isolation? Is it counseling? Is it something a little less official or specific? What should they do?
Make the effort to change your life. I would, of course, biasly say download friending. It's iOS only at the moment.
Mhm.
But one of the differentiating factors, which I haven't mentioned, is that you can only look about 40 miles in your neighborhood because we figured that you wouldn't go further than that to, socially meet on a regular basis. And basically ask yourself, how many non-co-workers have you met this week? I mean, when I was a kid, which wasn't today, I'm 62, I would go out on my bike and, ride my bike with other people. And if I got grounded, as the expression says, grounded, meaning I cannot go out,
Mhm.
today life has turned the other way around. If you are quote unquote grounded, you are grounded, meaning you can't use your laptop, phone, iPad, whatever, so you're forced to go out. Now, if you think about it, when I was, I don't know, a teenager, um, I literally was grounded inside the house. Today, the same teenager, grounded means go outside and do something because you can't use your iPad or phone or whatever. So there's obviously something drastically wrong the way we look at society today and what we consider friendship and activities. So change the way you think about yourself, make the effort to go out and meet people, whether it's friending or whatever else. Unless you make the effort, there is no app or tool that can help you. So initially, you have to realize that you need help. I'm not saying like an alcoholic, that's not what I mean, but the concept is the same. You need to realize that there is a problem. And the way to solve this problem is by meeting other people, and then you figure out what is the best way for you. If it's an app, if it's a community, bingo club, I don't know, football, soccer, sports, hiking, whatever, that's also fine. I mean, yes, I would love if everybody downloads Friending, but I've also reached my goal if in 10 years I see a research that, loneliness is going down to 40 million people or whatever. But my problem is it's going to get worse. And I have a reason for that. AI is being the specific reason. Even today, people speak to ChatGTP. You have a friend because it's always answers, always nice. And further along, I don't know if you read it, maybe 6 months, a year ago, there's a new robot coming out called Neo, which is like $10,000 today, which is a lot of money. But in 2 years' time, it will be 2,000 and knowing 10 times as much as today. So imagine a humanoid in your space who always agrees, does the chores from cleaning to washing, whatever,
Mhm.
is the best friend you can think of. But it's not real. So that perception, again, will just deepen the fact that you have a friend when it's not really a human being.
Hmm. Yeah, I imagine myself being like Will Smith and iRobot, kind of resistant to getting a robot inside the house for a while. Um, but I want to talk just real quickly about the workflow, and if you could explain the workflow with friending. And so someone downloads the app, they create a profile, they're verified, and then how do they go about you said 40 miles is the radius, but how do they go about finding friends? Is it, interest based? Is it just, a random selection of things? How does that work?
It's you create what we call "Are you in" cards. Are you in card meaning are you into that activity? And
Mm,
there are two types of activities sort of you can do. One is planning ahead, meaning on Sunday or Saturday, I'm having coffee here. Would you care to join me? And then people would, you could limit the number of people to, I don't know, whatever, or you don't put a limit on it. So that's a planned activity sometimes in the future. But let's say you went jogging and you realized it would be nice to have somebody to jog with. Then by basically a few taps on your screen, um, you can let people know that you're currently jogging and where you are. And if their neighborhood and are inclined to jog, they can join you there and then. So it's more like an ad hoc activity. That's one thing. The other type of is the curated activity. That's a there are several kinds. One that we would organize as friending. The other is that you would organize as one of the members, and that could be organized in two different ways. One of them is saying that you need to sort of register up front so you know who is coming. The other one is just you could sort of register and keep it a surprise. You can set parameters that I'm only interested in, I don't know, in Gen Z, male, female, whatever. So you can, and then only those people would see that activity. And then you may want to organize sort of like a surprise party for yourself in the respect that you have no idea who is going to show up. You know that they meet certain parameters, and then you will meet them for the first time without even knowing who they are exactly going to be. Sort of, it's more like serendipity in that sense that who you're going to meet, you're not really sure of, but you do know that you're meeting people that you are likely to get on with, age, interest, whatever preferences you set, but you don't actually. It's like a blind date sort of thing, but not for dating, but for friending, and it's not single individual, but let's say a group of 5 or 6 people. So that sort of makes it more fun and interesting. But if you're not that adventurous, you can organize events yourself, and then you could pre-screen them if you want, because you're the organizer, or we could organize events ourselves, meeting certain criteria as well. So there are interesting ways to meet new people.
Yeah, I have to say the blind surprise party is not something I've thought about before. I have to take a couple minutes and think about that one. There's so many there's some positives with that, there's some negatives with that. It's kind of all over the place in my head right now. Um, so it sounds like it's really just organizing based off of interests, hobbies, activities, um,
And
like-minded
location,
people.
because you're
Yeah,
you're in the same space.
yeah. So, and the age range is it just adults?
And basically, it's we are more forgiving because we just say Gen Z. We don't you don't actually have to say your age. It's just the generation that you belong to. It's sort of more flexible, and basically you can pick as many as you like. Boomers, Gen X,
Hmm.
Gen Y, Gen Z, depending on who you like to mix with. Or you can say all if you don't really care about their age and you're more interested about other aspects of their personality. Maybe their interest, maybe they're all, I don't know, soccer lovers, being the World Cup.
Hmm.
So maybe
Yeah,
that's what you want to discuss with them, and then you don't care how old they are.
yeah. I mean, we all know Gen X is the best anyway, so that's fine. Um, as a Gen Xer here, that's my opinion.
Want more clarity? perspective, and real conversation? Tune in to Dave's Head Podcast. Every episode delivers insight, conversation, and stories that make you think, and maybe even smile a little. Whether YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Alive Podcast Network, or your preferred source, subscribe, follow, tune in, and share with anyone who needs to hear it. Don't you miss a single episode. Your next great conversation starts in Dave's head.
All right, so Gabe, that's the end of the Q&A segment with my podcast, and what I'd like to do right now is move to the first thoughts segment of the podcast. And first thoughts, for those who have not tuned in before, I offer a word or phrase to Gaber to get his first thoughts. Obviously, he's not privy to them because that would ruin the idea of first thoughts. So, Gabe, you ready for some first thoughts?
Sure.
All right, so first thought, and I like to try to start with a softball one, connection. If I say connection to you, what's your first thought?
Unfortunately, it's online connections, but that's not what I want people to say in 10 years' time.
Okay. And feel free to elaborate as much or as little as you want, by the way.
Yes, unfortunately, as you said yourself, it's not a good marketing term, but what Facebook is a collection of online, almost random collections. Because at least on LinkedIn, it is more, I guess, sector driven in the sense what work you do. But on Facebook, it's just sort of random people. Some people thrive on the fact that, hey, I have 10,000 connections. Some people keep it more low key, that are really only going to pick at least friend of a friend or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, today, that's what I would reply.
Okay. Next first thought, kind of close, but belonging. If I say belonging to you, what's your first thought?
A lot of nowhere is my first thought, the word that comes to mind, because if you were belonging, you wouldn't be alone. Unless you say belonging, referring to, again, getting back to Facebook, various online platforms. My answer to belonging is nowhere. If you don't actually belong to a physical group, you may belong to numerous online groups. But in my answer to belonging, that doesn't count. So when I say nowhere, I mean you don't belong to any non-virtual groups.
Okay. And last first thought, how about curiosity? What's your first thought?
Interesting. I think people have lost interest or afraid to discover, or they are afraid to belong and to let other people, I guess, see who they really are. Because online you can fake who you are, and I don't mean fake in terms of fake profile. I just mean it is very difficult to
Real
really
life.
get to know, and so that's what I meant by fake. I mean, it is you,
Mm-hmm.
not fake in a fake profile sense, but meeting face to face, you can tell much more about a person than online, and that's what I mean, really, by fake.
Okay. No, that one I'll comment on that. I 100% agree that you can, fake your finances, your lifestyle, your happiness, your relationships, all those things can be fake because you're just posting words or videos without any authentication steps taken, right? There's nobody that says, hey, your bank account really doesn't have that, or you're really not
On
happy at
Facebook,
home.
everybody is happy.
Yeah, for the most
Okay?
part.
Yes. And in real life, I would question that, and that's what I mean
Mhm.
by fake.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Gabriel. So something I started last season was allowing my guests to throw a word or phrase back at me called TO First Thoughts. So if you had a word or a phrase you wanted to get my first thoughts on, what would it be?
Why did you pick me as a guest in terms of why is loneliness one of the things that you're interested in?
So one of the things that, first of all, your app was very interesting to me because I think when you look at dating apps, you look at social media apps, it kind of fits somewhere in between. It's not a dating app, but it's not just a typical social media app. It's a connection app, which is not something you see a lot these days. There's some websites out there that do some of those things, but not nothing I've seen this new and this successful so far. And so I wanted to get your thoughts around loneliness as well, because looking at COVID, everybody had very different experiences with COVID. Some people handled the isolation very well, some people didn't. Some people did handle it in the moment, but coming out of COVID, they have a whole different experience and a whole different way of looking at being around people. And so I was curious about the loneliness conversation just because not only with COVID, but politically, and family wise and connection wise, it's a different world, I think, today than it was 10 years ago. Um, and so, just having that conversation and recognizing that loneliness is a thing that's not talked about at all. I mean, you hear about depression, you hear about um, all the different things around that. You hear about career this and career that, family this, divorce, all these things. But loneliness is not one of the things that's talked about that much. And so it was an opportunity to get you on to talk about that. And I'm thankful that we did, because hopefully somebody listening or watching this episode will think about the life that they live and how much they're masking potentially their loneliness, or to the point about Facebook, how much they're masking their loneliness with a fake profile, quote unquote fake profile, on social media. So I'm very happy to bubble that conversation up, because I think it does need to be talked about almost on the same level as depression, suicide, those types of things. Because, like you said, they're not cousins; they're brothers. All right.
COVID, I think, is around today. I don't mean it as a virus. I mean
Mm,
it as a lot of companies allow people to work from home.
mm,
And I always work from home, so I don't have an issue
yeah,
in that respect.
me
But
too.
some people actually enjoyed the 10-minute coffee break with their coworkers, which now they have lost out on because they are home.
Hmm.
Also, not all homes and not all individuals, I guess, living conditions are or catering for Zoom calls for 8 hours a day. So,
Hmm.
you may have a wife at home with young kids who are screaming, etc. So I think all these after non-medical yet psychological effects of COVID are still with us, because a lot of people are still at home who wish they could go back to the traditional work environment, which may or may not ever happen because perhaps companies realize I can go with a smaller office space
Hmm.
or save money, etc. So it has a far longer impact than the actual virus itself.
Yeah, and I will say, with COVID, I kind of adapted the way that I professionally, personally carried myself during COVID, just because I was able to work remotely for a position that I was in at the time, where I wasn't remote before. But I've come from a tech background, a consulting background, where I did a ton of remote work, so that particularly wasn't an issue for me. It was the outside stimuli of going for runs or going to the gym or hanging out with friends that didn't happen as much. And so what I turned to was, working out more, stepping outside, on the deck and working out, or just doing things outside, not outside the house per se, but outside on the property, so to speak. Um, but also what I found too is I established and kept those sort of connections going by doing live videos and having conversations with friends through Zoom and Teams and whatever the iPhone one is called. I can't think of it right now. Um, but coming out of that and having the freedom again to do and go wherever you wanted to, I found that I didn't want to as much, because I become acclimated to, cooking dinner inside the house instead of eating out. I've become acclimated to working out at home instead of paying for a gym membership. Um, and so those adjustments that happen, um, kind of led me down to a decision earlier this year where I made that I want to get out of the house more. I want to actually go to a physical gym. I want to kind of eat out a little more and go to happy hours and go people watch and do those things. Just because, the ebb and flow of COVID kind of got a lot of people accustomed to that isolation that we're talking about. Um, and so getting out of that and figuring out the ways that they're comfortable getting out of that, because some people went through COVID and really don't want to be around people anymore as a result of it. And
That's
so
what I mean
getting,
by effect today, because
yeah,
they're still haunted by COVID in that
yeah.
respect.
Yeah, my dad is actually one of those people. He doesn't want to be around be around people at all. Not funny, but it's a little funny because that's just not his personality to be around people anyway. But he definitely doesn't want to be around people anymore since COVID. Um, but just what I'm happy about to get back to the question that you asked me, was this conversation is now going to be had by many people seeing this episode or listening to this episode. And maybe we'll think a little differently about how we've adjusted since COVID and whether it's beneficial to our mental psyche or physical psyche. A lot of people are staying in the house, not being healthy, not working out, not doing anything because they're just so isolated. So that's why I wanted to have you on and have that conversation and bubble those types of things up. So,
Yes. Happy to do that.
so as I do with all my guests, before we go, I like to offer you an opportunity if you want to promote. And I know we've been talking about your app, but if you want to promote or talk about anything, feel free to do so now.
One of the interesting things we're doing, hold on, let me grab that, is because you would meet in a coffee house, so you can actually buy coffee on our site, friending.com. And the interesting part is not so much the coffee, although it is various cities and whatnot, is the back part, the QR
Mm,
code. And the
okay.
QR code allows you to send a message to the recipient. So when you order the coffee, you type in your message. I could say, thanks for the podcast. And one of the reasons we're doing that is for you to read the message, you need to download the app. So that's again a marketing funnel, perhaps, that we use to ask people to download the app, because to read the message, you need to download the app. But look at it that way. You save on a birthday card, you save on a message card or whatever, because it's all part of the coffee's packaging. And there are about, I don't know, 40 or so various different coffees on our website on friending.com. So thank you for the opportunity to mention this.
Absolutely. And can I ask or offer the suggestion? Can we add some teas? I'm not a coffee drinker,
Yes,
but
we
I
do
love
have
some
tea as
tea.
well. We do have
Okay.
tea.
Good. Good.
We have yes, matcha and tea as well.
Okay. Great.
So,
Great. Great. All right. Well, Gabriel, I want to thank you for stepping into Dave's head. In a world where we often measure, like we talk about followers over friendships, I appreciate the reminder that meaningful friendships still start the old-fashioned way: genuine conversations, shared experiences, and to your app's credit, just simply showing up. So, as I say to all my guests, and a wish that I have for all my guests, may every today be the best day of your life. Thanks for
thank
stepping in
you so
Dave's head.
much. And I hope your listeners enjoyed this as well. Thank you again.
Appreciate it. My favorite segment of my podcast is my grin, which stands for great reason to be in love with now. Well, if you're watching this, you've survived the heat dome. Unless you lived under a rock, and honestly, you may have the upper leg on us if you've been living under a rock because it's probably cooler under there. There's been a bit of a heat dome over a good part of the country, and even outside of the country, the last week or so. A lot of people, including myself to an extent, because I was out there golfing one day, don't respect the heat. And, high temperatures aren't just uncomfortable, they can become dangerous quickly. Um, Quick story golfing, the uh, Friday, 2 Fridays ago, 1 Friday ago, whatever it was. And it was a good 98, 99, 100 degrees out there by the time we were done. I've never counted down how many holes left I have in a round. And I started that countdown around 5, where I said, whew, 5 holes ago, 4 holes ago. Oh, thank God, last hole. I've never felt like I just didn't want to finish a round, but I did. I toughed it out, but it was tough out there. Treat extreme heat with the same seriousness you would treat a winter storm, right? And for a lot of people, especially the elderly, sick and elderly, heat, winter storm, hurricanes, obviously tornadoes, um, those are dangerous moments for the elderly and the sick. But hydration starts early. And if you know me, I might smoke a cigar or two on the golf course. I might have a drink or two on the golf course. I had none of those. It was too hot to smoke a cigar. and I had Powerade after Powerade after Powerade. I was not in the mood to have a libation at all. But by the time you feel thirsty, and I think we've heard this before, you're already behind, which is why I just kept guzzling. I wasn't really sweating that much early, but towards the end, sweating a lot. That's why I was guzzling the hydration drinks I was drinking. Staying hydrated throughout the day is one of the simplest ways to protect yourself, obviously, because hydration is the fuel that keeps you from passing out, suffering heat stroke, all that stuff. Checking on others, right? Mention elderly people, your family, neighbors, young children, even. Those are medical conditions. They are the greatest risk. And a quick phone call, visit can literally save a life. Slowing down, right? Not every summer day needs to be packed with a bunch of activities. I say that as I talk about the fact that I go off that day. And I'm fully aware of the hypocrisy of what I just said. But sometimes the healthiest decision is simply staying inside during peak heat. Now, I will say, to my credit, I set the tea time very early in the morning. That way we would be done before high noon, so to speak. What I did not anticipate was it felt like the heat dome came on midway through the back nine. Um, it was hot. It wasn't suffocating hot where you inhale heat and it feels like your body can't hold it in, you have to blow it out. But it was hot. It was draining hot. Summer's still meant to be enjoyed though. And so for some of us, if you're healthy, if you're hydrated, if you love the heat, listen, I'm a winter baby, but I love the summer. I love the heat. I'm not opposed to the heat. Now, physical activities in the heat, not necessarily a good thing, right? But I can sit out on the beach. I can be in a pool all day. I love the heat. Extreme temperatures don't mean, though, that your summer's ruined. It just simply means you need to adjust your schedule, find cooler activities, enjoy the season safely. And so my grin for this episode is based on my experience recently and just good common sense thinking. 10 ways to enjoy the heat without passing out. Number one, which I think we did the first half of this with golf, get outside early or late. Morning and evenings are cooler, obviously. Making walks, golf, gardening, and or patio breakfast, much more enjoyable. Getting out before the sun reaches high noon, getting out after sun is at its peak and we're at twilight or sunset. Cool breezes start as long as there's no storms, because heat brings storms at night sometimes. Doing that increases your chances of one, not being dehydrated, and two, actually enjoying the day. Number two, turn your backyard into a vacation. Now, again, if you can take the heat and if it works for you, fire up the grill, put on some music, grab a cold drink, enjoy being home instead of fighting crowds. Being around a bunch of people is really hot. You don't have to do it. You can do a stay home day. Number three, visit your local pool or splash pad. One of the simplest, cheapest ways to beat the heat. Now, I will say, publicly populated pools, or where I am, the pool on the property, if you will, not a terrible fan of. I think if you have your own pool, you're chemically treating it in a way that is beneficial for you and hygienic for you. I don't think public pools do that enough a lot of times, especially if you get a tons of people in the pool. Now, vacation resorts, I know they treat those pools because I've seen them at night dump stuff in there. So I understand. Now, if I go to a place that has a bunch of kids and a bunch of people in the pool, I'm probably less likely to get in the pool as much because, kids just be peeing in pools and a bunch of people you're going to get just by the numbers. You have 100 people in the pool, you probably got 5 to 10 that are peeing in it. After a while, it's just nasty. Just nasty. Number 4, become a sunset person. Summer sunsets are among the best all year. Take a walk, enjoy dinner outdoors, or simply sit and watch the day end. I do agree. I love a good sunset. If you have to give me a sunrise or sunset, it depends where I'm at. If I'm near the water, near the ocean, and I can see a sunset in that direction, I do love that because there's this period of time, and it has an official name, like twilight has an official name. That's when the sun passes the horizon, but there's still light in the sky. That's what twilight is. I don't remember what the opposite of that is, where the sun is up but it hasn't crossed the horizon yet. So you get the light without the sun. Don't remember what it's called. I'm sure somebody will comment or inbox me and tell me what that is, or I can just look it up after this episode. But I do love a good sunset where I'm looking in the U.S. to the east at the ocean, and I pre-sun come up, that time period where you can see the light and it looks beautiful, and then you finally get that peak of the sun touching the horizon and that light that just comes across. It's an amazing thing to see, especially in a clear blue sky day. Make hydration interesting is number 5. Add fresh fruit, mint, I'm good on mint, cucumber, or electrolyte mix. I stay with my electrolytes. That's what I do because I work out almost every day, 3-4 times a week. I drink a lot of electrolytes. Um, so drinking water doesn't have to feel like a chore. And if you're like me, someone who for the longest time didn't like the taste of plain water, those things help out. I'm still not the greatest fan of water, but I drink it. I've mentally forced myself to drink more water. And so sometimes I need something mixed in, sometimes I don't. Just really depends. Number 6, rediscover frozen treats. Homemade smoothies, fruit popsicles, Italian ice, or water ice as we call it in Philly, or frozen grapes make the heat a little more fun. Now, I've never done frozen grapes before. Um, Interesting, because I'm used to just chewing grapes. And so if they're frozen, do I have to hold them in my mouth and wait for them to get soft enough? Because it's kind of weird to me. So might pass on frozen grapes. Number 7, take advantage of air-conditioned adventures. Museums, bookstores, libraries, aquariums, malls, or even catching a matinee can make for a great day. Now, I have to say, I literally just had this conversation with Tio probably a couple days ago. Haven't been to the movies in a long, 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 I mean, like long, long time. I think it's last year, since like 2025 last year, since I was at a movie. Almost sure that's true. Maybe I'll do that soon. Number 8, protect yourself like it matters. Sunscreen, a hat, sunglasses, light color clothing aren't just smart, they help you stay outside longer. Now, I will say sunscreen is kind of in my lotion already, but if I also have it in my golf bag for those wondering. You can't really see unless I lift up my shirt here. I've got a whole golfer's tan. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify video or any of the video, live podcast network, I got a whole tan going on here, a golfer's tan. A hat I wear all the time with golf now. I used to not do that. I used to just rock the baldy outside and didn't have to worry about the tan lines. Now I kind of do. So sometimes I take my hat off during the rounds just to kind of give myself a little more sun on the head. Sunglasses I wear every time I play. Um, Light colored clothing. I did that with that round. I'm aware. Don't wear dark. Whew, bad choice. Number 9, and I wish I'd have kind of did this in a different way when I was golfing, but listen to your body. Heat exhaustion sneaks up quickly. If you're dizzy, yep, I was dizzy for a couple moments. Don't nobody stress. Nauseous, not nauseous, or unusually tired, get inside and cool down. Now, I will say at one point, probably around the third from the end or second from the end hole, if you've golfed before, you take a couple practice swings sometimes. Sometimes you just feel comfortable, you go up there and hit, but took some practice swings, and I realized my practice swings has zapped all the energy I had. And practice swings aren't full swings. I'm a somewhat strong guy. And so practice swings for me are probably, say, 40 to 45% power, right? It's just the feel of the swing. And note to self, they probably should be 75% of full power, but I don't have to use a bunch of full power to swing. Whole learning experience I'm going through right now to correct some things that have gone wrong in my game the last month or two. But I realized like the practice swings were zapping my energy, and so I didn't have much for my full swings. And then I'd get energy back, and then I go to the next shot or the next hole when I needed a real swing, and practice swings are draining me again. That's how hot it was the last 5 or so holes. But I'd say probably should listen to my body a little more and maybe dial it back a little bit. Or just say, this round is it. That's it. That's enough. But listen to your body. Your body will not lie to you when it comes to heat exhaustion. It's one of the things that can take you out. It's one of the things that can put you in danger, because if you pass out, you don't control how your body falls. And so you hate to be on a concrete sidewalk or on a top of flight of steps or anything, driving a car, right? When heat exhaustion hits. So listen to your body. Lastly, number 10, remember summer is short. In a few months, we'll all be complaining about scraping ice off our windshields. So do yourself a favor, enjoy the season, but do it smart. I want to thank Gabor Kadas for stepping into Dave's head. Check out the Friending app at friending.com. I'm very thankful, by the way, that they have tea. I don't know if I'll be purchasing it at all, but I had to mention that because these people out here, and not saying him specifically, but people out there who just cater to coffee drinkers, like that's all the world is coffee drinkers. Y'all need to stop. Tea is good for you. Green tea is amazing for you. Start catering to some more of these tea people and come up with some better flavors. Like, I'm sick of the raspberry this and pomegranate that and green this. Like, there's got to be something else. And I'm not a fan of not Old Bay. I'm about to say Old Bay tea. It's not Old Bay tea. I can't think of the name of it right now. It was right there. Earl Grey. Not a fan of Earl Grey at all. It's actually Captain Picard's tea on Star Trek: The Next Generation, by the way. But again, thank you, Gabor, for stepping in Dave's head. Friending.com. I got to tell you, I love the concept. And I didn't bring this up during our interview, and I should have. It was something that popped in my head, but I lost the thought. We're going to say social media app, though that's not exactly what it is. But for the Friending app, and for, the X's and Instagrams of the world that have those little check marks, right? Check mark people. You validate your ID. You confirm who you are. And so I ask this question every single election Tuesday. We have the ability to verify identities because identity verification is such a big deal, right? We can pay bills from our phones. I can transfer you money right now from my phone. I can look at my social security statement from my phone. I can look at my tax returns from my phone. I can file my taxes from my phone and have done it before. I can do all these things from my phone because I verified my identity. But somehow voting is not possible. And the only reason it's not possible is because the more access to voting people have, there are people who fear not being in power anymore. Remember, a third of the country didn't vote and typically doesn't vote in an election. These are eligible voters. About a third of the country does not vote. Maybe someday we'll be able to do this. I mean, literally, I can do a facial recognition from my camera right now, which will verify my identity with third-party services and confirm who I am. But I can't vote that way. Anywho, check out Friending. I do like, and the reason I brought that up because I like the fact that the app verifies the identity of every single account that's created. It does eliminate, hopefully, I'm going to guess 99.9% or somewhere around that, the catfishing, as Gabor talked about. But we have to think better about this technology thing that we are employing every day. There's no reason that we shouldn't be able to vote by devices at this point. I can't do a technical certification test without keeping my face on camera from home if I'm doing the test from home to confirm the validity of what I'm doing, but I can't vote that same way. Make it make sense. But thank Gabor for stepping in Dave's head. Check out again, one more time, friending.com. Lastly, before I let you go, as always, or at least in the last couple seasons, I leave you with a quote for this episode. You might know the name of the quote artist. It's Charles Dickens. And the quote goes like this: "No one is useless in this world who lightens the burden of another. Back to our World Cup conversation and stereotypes and all the good that bucks those stereotypes and buck those negative connotations. All the good that people do every single day in this world. If you can take the burden a little bit off someone, if you brighten someone's day, if you can do a good deed, it's contagious. That feeling is contagious. And not a single person in the world is useless who does those positive things. We have to be willing to do them, number one, but we have to believe that people are capable of those things before any of this is a normal in this country or this world. We're more than capable of it. We're way more than built for it. And we absolutely have the capacity for it to do it over and over and over and over again. Starts with one person, becomes two, becomes four, becomes 8, 16, keep doubling. You know the routine. It's contagious if we simply just do it. Thank you for stepping into Dave's Head. Until next time, make sure to get your daily dose of perspective and always be the tone setter in your life. That's all for this episode of Dave's Head. If you enjoyed this episode, I'm sure you'll love similar content in the Alive Podcast Network app. Plus, you can support this podcast and enjoy ad-free listening to nearly 100 other Black-hosted podcasts. Download the iOS or Android app, become a member, and experience unlimited access to Black-hosted content week after week. Follow, like, and or subscribe to this podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and or X at Dave's Head Pod, and on YouTube at Dave's Head Podcast. For more information and links to all things Dave's Head, check out our website at daveshead.card.co. Episode premiere on the 2nd and 4th Fridays of the month. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, enjoy life because life should be fun. Take care.